Hey people, hope everyone is having a good day. It is a good day today. Hope everyone is enjoying the day. I think everyone can agree with me. We're living definitely in interesting times, or I personally find the whole thing happening very mind blowing. Um, I came across something a few days ago on Instagram, which actually got me thinking, and was basically talking about how this pandemic is progressing with regards to like African countries, how they're dealing with it, and how the future might or might not look for some of these African countries. And it actually got me thinking, and I actually dug deeper, went into the archives to look for some degree of evidence from past pandemics and how this was dealt and how this affected this developing countries or low income countries or African countries in specific. Um, and I really just want to get people aware of what we're dealing with. This is not a joke. And if you look at the history, if you look at how for example, the 1918 pandemic flu, which killed a large sum of people, it literally, the pandemic wiped, I think if I have it correctly, one fifth of the world's population, or were infected, one fifth of the world's population was infected by the 1918 pandemic. That is such a huge number of people. And if you look at the damage it did specifically to low income countries, I think the only country that actually had like recorded data was India. And it took away, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 18 million people from India alone. That goes to tell you something. So the thing is, what we're seeing now is that the virus is slow because it's a pandemic, right? A pandemic spreads globally, goes through the whole world. You need just one person to come into your country and it spreads, right? And that's what we're seeing. African countries at least have a delay of the virus approaching. So now we have like 100 cases in Cameroon, for example, and it's growing by the day. We see it's growing by the day. The government is trying to take measures to prevent it, but I feel like the people have to do the work to prevent it as well. You have to be aware this is not a drill. You have to be aware this virus kills people. And the thing is, if you don't take the measures yourself to prevent it, you will eventually get it, right? I understand it's difficult. For example, the government gives measures, stay at home, do this, and it's very tricky in an African setting because some people don't have the means to afford 2 weeks of food, of grocery shopping or whatever. So it's hard to tell these people to stay at home when they can't fend for themselves at home. But if you think about it yourself, what good would it do for you to get provisions for 2 weeks and end up dying? That makes no sense at all. So it's up to you to see how this virus is progressing. Because the truth is, if it gets into an African setting, if it gets into African cities are very populated. For example, take Lagos, take Yaoundé, take Douala in Cameroon. These are cities which are packed with people. People live in close proximity. The houses have like 10 people living in one. It's if the virus gets there, it spreads faster. So the best way for us to tackle this is to prevent the virus from getting there. Because if it gets there, it's going to be much harder, much harder to control the spread of the virus. So I'm just trying to implore Africans, basically, especially Cameroonians. The government is giving measures. All of them might not make sense to you, right? But it's up to you to think about this. It's not a matter of you. I'm in my 20s. Yeah, I might not be affected by it that much. But think about the people you're living with. Think about the people you're coming into close proximity with. Those people might not survive it as well as you would. Those people might end up dying. And it's like that is what we're trying to prevent. Because if it gets in, which is already spreading now, this is the best time for us to control this. We have 100 cases. We're way ahead of other European countries or something like that. We don't have as many cases as you have elsewhere in the world. This is the best time for us to slow this thing down and hopefully not let it get to a point where we cannot control it. Because the truth is, most African countries don't have what it takes to control a massive outbreak of this virus. We don't have the ICU beds. We don't have the medical personnel. We don't have the capacity. We don't have the infrastructure sometimes to even control this, to test it, to put people under critical care or monitoring. We don't have all these things. So the best thing for us to do, the wisest step for us to take at this moment is to prevent it getting to a point where we cannot control it. So I'm just trying to like implore everyone, think for yourself. Look at how it's progressing in Europe. Even Europe does not have the capacity to contain this massive outbreak. Think about it for yourself. I think it's much better. We will benefit from this much more if we just prevent it. prevent, if not for your sake, for the sake of those you're living with, for your parents, your grandparents, whoever. Think about it for yourselves and take a step towards preventing this getting worse. Because the truth is, Africa might be slow, but it's a pandemic. If we don't work on it, if we don't work to prevent it, it would eventually get to where it is, for example, in Europe or the States, and we definitely don't want that. I hope people take this seriously, and I hope people stay at home or take measures to prevent the spread of this thing. But anyways, stay safe, people, and God is with us.